What is up, adventurers, and welcome to a brand new ShawnSetGO video. Today we're going to be talking about some of the things preluding into our next episode of Hearths and Crafts, our brand new podcast featuring World of Warcraft features. Of course, if you are a creator out there wanting to talk about World of Warcraft and things that you enjoy in WoW, whether that's transmog, Mythic Plus raiding, or even just achievement hunting or something like that, or mount hunting, let me know. I'd love to have podcasts with multiple creators, but this one is going to talk about some of those things that we're all thinking about on a daily basis that I really want to talk about on our next podcast, and that is the meta. The meta is the thing that is, it's the thing we hate, but the thing that we have to follow at the same time. So this has been the experience for some. I don't want to say all. I'm not making sweeping statements here, but this has been the experience for a lot of people, and it is the the experience for the non-meta DPS sim. And these are just full of declines. A few D-lists, of course, but a lot of declines. I mean, you could say the D-lists are because your application to that group gets declined, and it's just the way it is. And they're 13 plus, so, you know, I mean, depends on what the characters have. You know, maybe they only have a 9 clear and people don't trust them. But even still, when you're non-meta, you start to feel it more and more as you get into higher keys. And this seems like the perfect time to tell you that goldcap.com is going to offer you fantastic ways, not just to earn the meta, but to look good doing it. They're going to give you the gold that you need to afford the eons of things that you need WoW tokens to afford, whether that's their packs or their bundles or their mounts or their pets. So if you want the strategies and the guides to help you figure out how you can constantly be funneling gold to your characters to afford things like this, then goldcap.com is the way to do it. I'm going to share with you now a 10% off code that's going to help you to get started on your gold earning journey and find out the legit ways to get gold on your account and then get these things that you've been missing on your account for all these times. Doesn't matter what type of WoW you play, at some point or another, you're going to want to look good doing it. And this is the main way to do that. So back to the video, but I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you subscribe. First comment says, don't worry, even the meta have to deal with this. And it's true. I think that even though in the queues you can separate and sift by there's no other in my class, there's some people who they are needed, but the fact is you only need one of them. So if there's any other of your class, it doesn't matter if you're meta, they're not going to want another of you. Even if there's 3 DPS slots, they're not going to want doubles. You see those less and less the higher in the keys you go. It's just kind of the way it is. There's too many DPS versus tanks and healers. I mean, this is kind of the constant argument that we hear constantly. Even tanks are getting sifted out of this. So I don't think that there's an exception to tanks, but I do get it that there's simply less tanks and healers in a group than there is DPS. There's gonna be way more DPS, just the way the split works. You could add more tanks. It's not gonna change anything. It really isn't gonna change anything, but even tanks deal with it. I imagine, I don't play a lot of healers nowadays, but I imagine healers deal with the same thing nowadays because there's meta healers as well. The ones that we see on the top the most for tanks are Vengeance Demon Hunter and Paladin, Protection Paladin. But when you're a warrior out there, sometimes you don't get picked. You think that every single situation you get picked, but even with the rating and the eye level, sometimes it's not quite enough. Some people they sift out those non-meta specs in their brain, and that's just kind of the way they operate. I have 3150, and that's how it is for everyone. List of 13 and see how many applicants you get. I want to say this is kind of a slight silver lining. It's kind of a positive. I mean, it's kind of great that we are getting so many, I would say plus 12s, plus 13s at this point in the season. Definitely last season, it was 9s and 10s for sure. I don't know by how much of a difference, but it definitely feels like we're getting a lot more out there. So, I mean, that's something of a compliment. So for those of you who say I don't compliment WoW, but I want to say this isn't everyone's experience, but I will say against WoW, I think that there's too many cases where the non-meta are pushed out, and I am not a big fan. I've never been a fan. You could check my videos and see what I've said before, but I've always said that the non-meta shouldn't be punished for wanting to play the game that everyone else is playing. And I think that when you are the non-meta, it does require a little bit more work because you have to post keys yourself, or you have to post keys with another person. And Blizzard doesn't really do a good job of accommodating those things. So if it is the case that people who are non-meta are getting declined in groups so often, I think Blizzard needs to do better about making those queues for those players easier, easier to group up, easier to find other players, easier for them to get picked. I'm not saying buffs and nerfs are the way to do it, but there has to be something that Blizzard offers in that as a middleman for those non-meta specs, because there are a lot of players who whenever they're playing their DPS and they get denied, they go, I'm personally going to make it my mission not to play a tank or healer now because I really want to play this. If you, the more you put that person into a group, get them geared, get them into those mythic pluses, the quicker they are going to jump into those alts and play those other specs and other characters. I think the more you encourage those non-metas to get into the game, the more likely we are to get other classes that are, even if it's the non-meta tank or non-meta healer, you're going to get them into the queues. And people are clawing at the teeth for those groups. So I don't think it's necessarily the best idea to always put it on the players, because players are going to act how they're going to act. I think it's up to the developers to create a situation where this happens less and less often. Because this happens every season. This happens every expansion. There's got to be something to break the meta and break the routine of these things. Just run your own key. What's your RAO and eye level? Join a guild community. Roll a tank. Be friends with a healer or tank. Play a meta spec. Make 7 or 8 Reddit posts about it. Make a key as a tank. You get 5 million DPS. Ask you to join. You can't pick them all. Oh yeah, who's going to stop me? So I mean, so all these things that I'm saying are things that people have saying and know are the norm. This thing is, it's been the norm for long enough to where you can't expect player behavior to change. But what you can hope for is that Blizzard starts to encourage those either tank and healers to exist more, or for those non-meta specs to be like those gaps to be lessened, and for those players that are non-meta to be picked more often than they are currently. Something to encourage it, something to make it better for those players. Otherwise it's just going to exist like this forever. I mean, I don't think that should be the norm forever. If you run your own 13 keys, you'll get why people are picky. Nothing worse than giving a person a chance who will die on the first pull in the DG because their key is busted. I will say, I mean, more often than not, I am seeing more and more that how well you do in a key is really not based on anything other than tank routing and deaths. Everything else, it falls into place normally, but if you do a wrong route, or if you fail in your route, or a lot of people die early, say like 10 deaths, it'll cook your key. It's just the way it is. And I think that puts too much pressure on a tank to do it a certain way. And then lust at a certain time, like the whole thing with Priory, how you have to, like, there's very specific times you have to lust. It's so frustrating and annoying, and the way you have to pull it is so irritating. It makes dungeons that are already not fun even less fun. I think the whole thing with routes is absolutely trash, in that there's not a ton of variety in these things, and everyone runs them the same exact way. And I think Blizzard needs to look at these mythic dungeon pools a couple weeks in, like we are right now, and go, okay, what's the route that everyone's running? Okay, just this route. We need to make it to where at least 5 routes work reasonably. To me, the fact that there's not a lot of options in these dungeons that are open-ended makes no sense to me. A lot of people, it's the same way with Floodgate. Everyone is loving Floodgate and Priory so much for their open-ended style, but everyone plays it one way. And it's like, what's the point of it being open-ended? Like, why care? Like, why do this? Everyone does it the exact same skips, the exact same run through. It's all irritating. Like now, like the biggest theme I've had in this season 2, is that I don't get rezzed anymore. I don't get rezzed anymore because it's always better to just like release spirit and run back. Isn't that wild that the healers don't use res as a normal thing anymore? Like, why is that the case? It just, to me, it's so ridiculous that basically we're so strapped for time that we're not only chain pulling, we're not only pulling certain routes, but we can't even res a player reasonably without risking the few seconds that it does to get back. The one time I die nowadays is when I get battle resed. That one time, if it's available still at that point. But I'm a griping DPS, so what do I know? It's kind of my position to whine and gripe about these things. Can it be my turn to post this next? Yeah, it's going to exist for a long time, at least until something's fixed. I don't know exactly what Blizzard needs to do, but I think it needs to be in a position where we're making these more reasonable. If we're able to make time walking to where tanks and healers get bonuses, then I don't see why mythics can't reasonably have something bonus on their end for more existing. Or if you go say 10 plus minutes actively queuing, then why you can't get a little bit of a boost to make up for all that lost time. It gets kind of excessive. So that's my thoughts on that. And kind of moving forward into, well, here's the struggles for DPS. What are the struggles for tanks? Right now, the struggles for tanks seem to be in the exact same meta stylings, but also for our most meta tanks being Vengeance Demon Hunter. This player specifically wants to play WoW with their significant other, their spouse, and they want to be able to share the experience, but I'm not willing to be able to dedicate time to keep up with most meta strategies at all times. So at what key levels can I just ignore the gripes without care? And what levels should I avoid to not impede other players' experiences? Because I don't want either. And it seems that there's a lot of people now that are trying to get into Mythic Plus who are seeing that it's much more accessible, but are realizing that at a certain stage, if you don't have the routes figured out, not that you just can't W key. I think this person is specifically saying that they want to W key through dungeons. I think that right now you have to have the resources to have like the dungeon routes figured out before you do the dungeon. And I think that discourages and scares off a lot of possible tanks. So if we're wondering, where are all the tanks? Why aren't the tanks joining our groups? Why can't we get more tanks? This is the reason. The reason why is because the routes that are available are not like it's not obvious enough from in-game only where you're supposed to go. And I don't think it's a good like habit that as we go along, these routes get more and more complicated, very specific, and the timers just get tighter and tighter the higher we go. So I think that right now, my biggest gripe with the meta is that tanking is becoming this big DPS fest, but simultaneously this insane thing where you have to do a super hyper specific calculated route that's been meted out the wazoo to where when you get to it, if you don't do it exactly like everyone is expecting you to, or how imagine the worst player in your group expects you to, then you're tank. So it's like, what are you supposed to do? Like, what are you supposed to do with that? So it's like, I am often in a stage of awe where I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out what it is I can do to do better. And the only thing I can think of is, well, I'm just going to DPS this enough times to where the route becomes like muscle memory, I guess. But every time I do it, I'm like, this is wild. Like I would never do this out of default. And it's crazy that even with doing this, we're only like a few minutes ahead, like it's wild to me. So this one says, with Cookie Gear and DPS, you can see with the W route in 12s, no questions asked regarding examples. I've seen tanks messing up uptime in 14 seconds. It's no big deal. It's a good bonus, but the whole party doesn't need to mess it up. Top mini boss skips help a lot. Run Dark Flame Clef many times until you're confident enough to tell DPS to F off. The management of the pulls is independent of key level. At 14s, you should know routes with utilize your party, especially Priest, Mind Soothe, and Warlock's Gate. I think there's a lot of coordination involved in that I think is a little bit difficult in pugs to expect. Now, as people get higher in pugs, you can expect their standard of play to be much higher. But I think what this player is expecting is like, hey, if I know one route, you know, and I know what I'm doing, can I just leave it at that? I don't think it's that simple anymore. I think that nowadays you have to know, if you're tank, you have to know comps, and what your healer is going to be good at and what your DPS is going to be capable of doing. You have to have a lot more in your toolkit as a tank before you join a dungeon. And I think that that toolkit is becoming a lot more barren, just a lot of empty spots, unless you fill it with add-ons and weak auras and experience and specific routes. It gets to be too excessive. And I'm not a personal big fan of what direction it's heading, because even though it creates a higher standard of play for a lot of players, it makes it inaccessible to a certain level of players where they go, I'm not going to go beyond 7s because that's where it gets too hard. Out of nothing else, then I don't want to download weak auras. I don't want to do add-ons. I don't want to do all these things. I know the fights. I know the dungeon, but if I'm going to break a bunch of keys, I don't want to piss people off. I think it's the truth of the matter is people don't want to piss other people off. It's just that it's just kind of what happens sometimes. Sometimes you run dungeons and you bust a key and it's like, dang, really, that was just because of one fight. But if I would have done all these tricks and tips and meta design and meta comps and stuff like that, then I would have had more time. It's like, well, not everyone's wanting to do that. Some people are just trying their best. So I don't think that's a expectation that we should have of people. I think that I guess as long as we're getting players up to 9s, you know, reasonably before that has to happen, I guess that's a decent cutoff, you know, because I think at a certain point, you got to be able to be like, well, then at what point do people need to know what they're doing? I personally, I think it's going to be right around that 8-9 area. But hey, you know, if everyone's running 12s and 13s now, maybe we need to increase where that's happening. For me personally, it seems like you need to know all of that before you do 7s. So like 4 to 6s, you need to know that, it seems. So that to me is a little low. Is all things considered. So anyways, what do you think of the current meta, whether you are a DPS struggling to get into queues or a tank struggling as well? What do you think of these metas and these new standards for players? Are they too ridiculous? Are they too high? You know, let me know in the comments. Of course, give this video a like if you liked it. Subscribe to the page while you're at it. Check out our stream when we're live. We stream on TikTok and Twitch at ShawnSetGO. We often will be running either keys or delves or just chilling and talking about the podcast and stuff that we're creating and making. So hope you guys enjoyed the video, but until next time, catch you in the next one. Peace.